Brewers rejoice.
Big changes in standard.
This week on battlechads. Hello everyone, welcome back to the battlechads. My name is Dan and I am joined by my two lovely co-hosts Sam and Josh. How are we, lads?
Shell-shocked, I think, is a good way of putting it, Josh.
I was not expecting to see a list this big.
No.
I just wasn't.
I don't think anyone was. So, as you could probably tell by the title and the thumbnail, we're going into the ban and restriction announcement that happened today, or today of the time of recording, for June 30th. Massive shake-up. We weren't even close. We predicted it last week, and we weren't close at all.
No.
I mean, we got some right. I mean, we Corey Steelcutter.
Yeah, we got one right. I think that's it.
7.
To
One
be
out of
fair,
7, yeah.
I did say Monsters Rage too. I think that
good
was
point, yeah.
needed to go.
Yeah, 2 out of 7. Not bad.
It's all right. It's all right. So, if for those who don't know, for whatever reason you've been living under a rock, and we are your source of Magic the Gathering news. First of all, thank you. Second of all, there's been 7 cards banned in standard. So we've got Corey Steelcutter is banned, Abuelo's Awakening is banned, Monsters Rage is banned, Heartfire Hero, Up the Beanstalk, Hopeless Nightmare, and This Town Ain't Big Enough. All of those 7 cards are banned. After reading this, I had to just take a few minutes in a quiet corner in a dark room, just rocking back and forth, because my boy Heartfire Hero has been axed and Monsters Rage after months and months and months of me praying to the magic gods that it wouldn't get banned, and then both of them get banned. I wasn't expecting it to be like this.
Yeah, I think that my favorite portion leading up to ban announcement. Obviously, we have the cemented ban announcements now.
Yeah.
So I think that my favorite bit is like seeing people guess and think about it, and then this, nobody was right, nobody was close.
No
one. I think it's because the heuristics of the BNR in the past is like, oh, we'll ban a card from here, a card from there, we'll knock it down a few pegs. You know, they were quite liberal in last December with unbans in Modern. You know, they were a bit big shake up there, but this is crazy. This is like a big BNR in standard. It's almost like it's probably bigger than, say, anything we saw in like 2018, sort of 2020 when Oko standard was around. You know, this is a big BNR. I mean, albeit it's a big standard, but this is a big BNR. This is every pillar deck right now in standard
gone. That
was even before Corey Steelcutter has been affected. Like, if you are a brewer, especially in standard, this is like Christmas. This is like a completely new format. Mental. So good though. So good.
I think you touch upon the really surprising aspect there, Josh, and the fact that this is every pillar pre-cutter. So, like, we haven't actually seen Hopeless Nightmare at this town. Even one person registered Esper Pixie for the Pro Tour Final Fantasy. To put it into perspective, a couple of months or a couple of weeks before Dragonstorm, it was a major player. So just see it go from such a dominant force to such a minuscule effort at the Pro Tour, and now actually receive a ban is actually, I think, pretty indicative of Wizards' ban philosophy at the moment. So, yeah, it's surprising. I didn't expect Wizards of the Coast to preview Fallout 5 with this nuclear apocalypse they've just instigated. But no, it's quite interesting.
Well, it goes on what we were talking about previously when we talked about standard, right? So you had the trifecta of decks. You know, they had the aggro deck, the Monsters Rage deck, then you had the domain deck, and then you had the bounce deck. And they were like they were like bouncing off each other in some harmony, right? Mm-hmm. And the fear was that if you banned before Corey Steelcutter, if you banned Monsters Rage, then it would send the domain deck into overdrive or the Pixie deck into overdrive. Now they've just decided, let's not worry about that. Let's just get it all gone and let's just start again. Let people build, brew. Let's go back to a mid-range paradise of where mid-range decks can exist, where you shout out to Marco, where your Golgari mid-ranges can exist, and those sort of decks, and this is amazing because I believe it was you, Sam, who said if they banned lots from the aggro decks, then the Omniscience deck would take over.
Yeah,
they covered that right here. If that get banned, then the Pixie decks would then take over. With the this town loops with Storm Taster's Talon, they cover that here. Like this is, or the domain decks. We don't want like the previous Pro Tour where it was all domain decks in the mirror domain decks in the finals. Like we're not going to have that anymore. Like this is mental.
Yep.
So it's...
I think.
Go on, Sam.
Oh, go on, Dan. Sorry. No. I was just going to say that. Do you guys think that this is a good announcement or a bad announcement? And I don't mean good as in good cards have been hit. I just mean as an announcement. What do you guys actually think? What vibe does this leave you with?
I think it's good that it's showing that Wizards of the Coast aren't afraid to be as brutal as they could possibly maybe need to be. Maybe a lot of people were just sick of seeing Heartfire Heroes into Manifold Mouse, and then also sick of like saying Hopeless Nightmare into Pixie, back into Hopeless Nightmare, and just generating lots and lots of sort of unwanted gameplay that you want to see, especially with it being standard as well, which is your introduction format into competitive Magic, really. So I think, especially if they're printing lots and lots of standard sets, they want the format to actually be sort of welcoming and inviting to these new players to come into FNM and say, oh, I can play this brew and I'm not just going to get rolled over on turn 3 or turn 4. So it's a good announcement. I think that the format definitely needed it. But it's brutal. Very, very brutal.
I think it's indicative of a potentially systematic problem that's in standard. Sorry, my voice is going on. Which is there's going to be a big standard moving forward, 3-year rotations, and standard has always been a format subject to staleness, right? You get a change, especially with the introduction of Arena, where previous to Arena, for a standard format to get stale, you would have a Pro Tour, then everyone copies the Pro Tour decks because the Pro Tour defines the meta. But now people can play as many games as you would in paper in a month, if not more, in like an hour or 3 hours.
Yeah.
Like previously in a month, you'd attend 3 standard FNMs a month, so that's 3, 6, 12 games of Magic in paper a month. Where now you can play that in 2 hours, an hour.
Yeah.
Like easy. Yeah. Like the meta solves really fast because of Arena, and standard being previously when it was a small format would get stale, and with the amount of sets in standard now, the power level of those cards, people are going to figure it out really quick, and the format is going to settle really, really quick.
Yeah.
And my point on that is they have to have these drastic BNRs every so often, because it's almost like this is a rotation, right? This is essentially a rotation.
Yep, this is the same impact on standard as Modern Horizons 4 would have on modern. I think is a decent way to put it. If you take a look at standard, there are 14 sets in standard, one of which is Aftermath. Martian and Machine's Aftermath, like the mini supplementary set they made that wrapped up the story and whatever you think about that set. I'm not going to include it as a real set because there's very minimal cards, but 13 sets in standard. Then 7 cards isn't even 1 card from every set. I know the 2 cards here from Throne of Eldraine, but what I mean is like there's still, even if we attribute one of these cards to a set, there's still over 7 sets that haven't been touched here, and it just goes to show the scope and the wealth of standard at the moment. But I think this actually, look, it's a positive thing. Don't get me wrong. Magic's format being playable is never going to be a negative, but there's just a couple of things here that have personally I don't gel with as a player very well, and I'm just interested to hear you guys' thoughts on my takes on it, really. So firstly, I think leaving not for the thing I don't like is that Wizards keep advertising things verbally before they happen. Okay, we are not going to ban anything in standards until this one, just before rotation. Okay, this announcement, we are not going to touch anything in modern. Like that, there is no need for them to verbally announce these things in advance, because inevitably, when you say sweeping statements like this, you're going to trip yourself up at some point. What I really don't like about this is they have left this up until right now to ban cards that were problematic retroactively. A couple of, like, nobody enjoyed the Esper Pixie Menace meta of Hopeless Nightmare Pixie, Hopeless Nightmare you, Fear of Isolation, Hopeless Nightmare you, right? 40s you 3 times, and you've lost a life for the trouble. Now it's a top deck war. It's not a pleasant. I just think that, like, when they definitely they back themselves into a corner with announcements like this. To be fair to them, they said that Corey Seal Cutter would have been banned anyway because of its 42% of the Pro Tour, even if this wasn't the end of rotation announcement, really, which is fine. But I just think that, like, personally, if I've lived with Up the Beanstalk all of this time, or Heartfire Hero all of this time, maybe the actual trigger to change a format is in the next set. I don't personally see why you'd leave it until now to action that change.
Oh, it's a good point. It is a good point. I agree with what you said. Like in the last BNR, that they said that they're not going to touch modern because it's sort of like, you know, at the end of the format anyway, and they're going to look at it again in the next BNR after this one. But it is annoying to know that if there is a card that's really bad, like busted in modern, like take Nardu for example, if we have these scheduled BNRs and have already confirmed that they're not touching anything in the previous BNR, then you know that you've got the rest of the season to put up with Nardu, and then possibly any events that you go into, like Cardiff for example. For me, I'd have to put up with Nardu. So it is rough, and it's a good point.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I'll take it.
I think not having emergency bans or the scope of emergency bans in a card game is pretty bad.
Yeah,
like
I was more sort of on board with the schedule bans, but I think now it's sort of
I think the schedule bans should be a thing, but there should also be, right, action needs to happen, because the longer it goes on, it affects stores.
Yeah,
it affects people's engagement with Magic. It affects people's overall, I guess, morale with the game. You know, people get frustrated, and people just they don't respond well, and they haven't responded well. You know, it's all over Twitter, Discord, or Discourse, and all that sort of stuff. Like, not having the opportunity for emergency bannings, like drastic emergency bannings, is a big L in my opinion. And you know, people know the vibe. If you make that informed decision of, I'm going to buy the most busted, this is ridiculous tier 1 deck, like this is absolutely nutso busto, I'm going to buy into this deck, then I think there should be a bit of onus on the player there as well, to be like, well, especially a competitive player, I'm a competitive player, I'm probably in the loop if I'm grinding RCQs or I'm playing Magic Online a lot, I'm probably in the loop. I am taking a risk of playing this deck for the price of it being top of the meta. But thankfully, before we talk about, I know we're not finished with quite standard yet, but thankfully that's not the case right now in modern, thankfully. But it has happened because we have case studies, i.e. Nadu, i.e. Underworld Breach.
I'm not. You guys know me, right? I'd like to say at this point we know each other quite well. I just want to say, agree, I'm not a big-headed person by any means.
Who are you?
Yeah. I'm the guy that turns up every week and they're just too polite to kick me off. But I just want to say, a long time ago now, probably in Bologna prep or just after Bologna, maybe it was even the most recent ban announcement, I went, maybe Abuelo's Awakening can get banned. And Josh went, nah, I've never lost against Abuelo's Awakening because of the mid-range. And I just want to say that I told you so, guys. It's here. It is here. I was right.
Sam showing his true colours there.
Yeah, sorry. I will pull up the clip and post it all over Twitter. But I think that
hashtag be humble.
Yeah, I'm always humble unless I'm not. But look, at the end of the day, Magic is a big game. There's a lot of sets and standards. I actually, in philosophy aside, I don't agree with the philosophy, but I do actually like this announcement. Let's nuke the format, start fresh. And they have very importantly noted that they are now not going to do the standard ban thing once every rotation. They've said they're going to take a look at standard in another 9 months, which I think is a very healthy approach. Wizards are not perfect. They get things wrong. And I think one thing Wizards is transparent. Nardu was a design mistake that was changed last minute. They said that, in their article, they're very transparent with this sort of stuff. And I like that they've not said it, but they're basically going, look, we appreciated this hasn't worked, so we're going to step it up a bit. And that's the positive takeaway, I think, here.
Yeah, definitely.
I think, and I think maybe Dan mentioned this, or maybe you actually. I think, other than like VV, there wasn't really many Final Fantasy cards in the Pro Tour. Pro Tour Final Fantasy, it was just like there was hardly any Final Fantasy decks really, other than the obviously the draft stuff, and this just opens up the world to experiment, to brew, and all that stuff with the new sets coming up. Because the way this is now, and I'm going to use an example that Brian Koval used on a recent episode of Eternal Glory podcast, and it was great talking about standard and the way in the brewing space. If you have a scale of, and this is from Brian Koval, if you have a scale from 1 to 10, 10 being your most grindy, I guess, control, like sort of top end, end of turn sort of deck, i.e. in standard it was domain with your your domain control stuff, and then you had 1 being like aggro, like super fast, low to the ground, you are dead very, very quick. Standard was displaying that. Like the 1 was the Heartfire Hero stuff and the Runter Trade stuff and the Koi Steel Cutter, and then 10 was like your domain stuff. Now, what that means is that if that's the format, that's the space in which you have to do the decks in the 5, 4, 5, 6. It's a bit can't exist. They can't exist because they have such either polarizing matchups, or they get mid-ranged out too hard, or they get aggroed out too hard. So there's no brewing spaces. What I mean. So if the best aggro deck was like a 3, and the best sort of like mid-range deck or control deck, or whatever you want to call it, is like a 7 or an 8, then those brewing spaces can exist because they have game. But the way it standard before this ban announcement, there was none of that. Like there was no room to spare. You could have, I've got this really cool, Golgari brew or whatever, and then you just get Heartfire Heroed, Manifold Mouse, Monstrous Rage, brilliant. I've done nothing this game.
Yeah,
or you get comboed out with Abuelas or whatever, and it's just like there's no scope there.
There's just the litmus test there, which should generally be quite accessible for standard, is actually a really high bar. You've got to beat these aggro decks, you've got to beat these combo decks. You then have to be able to outdraw domain overlords. So, like, yeah, I think this is actually quite a good announcement. Actually, now, I guess I have my eye on standard. Dan, I know you'll never play standard again. I'm sorry for your loss. It's been a hard day. I literally saw it, and I didn't expect Heartfire Hero. I expected Manifold Mouse, like most people, I think.
Same, yeah. And
then to see the 1-drop get hit, I'm like, okay, I get it, but what a bad day to be a Dan enjoyer. This is why you can play it in Living End, Dan.
I can play it in Living End. I can,
yeah.
So it was weird to me seeing Heartfire Hero and not Manifold Mouse on that list. So I think with Rockface Village being the best land in that deck, is that you can just win through a top deck Heartfire Hero, activate your Rockface Village onto it, and then attack into a blocker, and it dies, deals them free, or they don't block and it deals them free anyway. So I can sort of see the reason as to why they've banned Heartfire Hero, but to me, it's just so cute. Like, I mean, look at it, man. It's so cute.
She got one on her desk ready.
I've got my Heartfires and my Monsters Rage. She's just sat there looking at me all upset.
It is atrocious, and I come this because I was turned away from stabilizing in the finals of an RCQ, and I lost this card because this punished removal.
Yeah,
that is not okay.
No, yeah,
it's just not okay. Like, I kill this, or I'll just pump it in response or whatever, or or I can't block with it. Like it was so bad. Like you needed very specific exile effects to deal with this, and it was not okay. Like, it was just too synergistic, too aggressive, and I believe this kills off. Does this kill off your ley line combo now?
Much worse, isn't it?
It's dead. I mean, because like Scamp rotates out anyway in a couple of weeks, so the deck would have been dead anyway. But now it is dead.
Yeah, good.
But no, I can still play them in Pioneer though, right?
What sets rotate? You play this exact deck, and you play the standard deck in Pioneer. Like
100%.
we'll talk about Pioneer as well in a minute because that is an absolute dumpster fire. But what sets actually rotating?
It's
Do you know the top of your head, Rob?
March of Machines and the Aftermath ones and the Dominaria.
Oh, Shield.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Dominaria, Brothers War, Phyrexia Obi-Wan, March of the Machines, and then Aftermath as well. So when we...
Anoint with Afflictions going as well.
Anoint's going,
yeah, so when we rotate...
going, Shelley's going, Leyline's going...
Wilds of Eldraine is off for standard set after rotation.
Yeah.
Chronologically. So to be fair, actually, a lot of people today have said, well, what about the mid-range and Golgari mid-range? But if they're losing all of their Premier 1 mana, 2 mana removal, I actually quite like this.
Yeah, I don't hate it.
I also, as I always say, Wizards know more about what's to be than we do.
Yeah.
So, you know, I assume we will get a 2 mana murder. Oh, they shoot the sheriff and stuff, right? So, like, there is options, but no, this is rotation's going to be pretty impactful. Wilds of Eldraine without Monstrous Rage, without Up the Beanstalk. The one I will say here is I think a lot of these cards are strong cards that exist in the right brackets alongside their Bezzy mates. Up the Beanstalk is just a mistake, I think. Like, in hindsight, that card's just...
It is.
It stops. The more sets that happen, the worse that card gets. It's like Titan in Modern. Like the longer that card exists, the better it gets because things get, better lands get printed and better 5-drops plus get printed.
Yeah, like, and then obviously to make your 5, 6, 7, 8 mana spells playable, you reanimate them into play, which we've seen a reanimation spell die today, which is quite interesting. Or we see some form of cheap alternative cost with a downside like impending, and it's just Up the Beanstalk is like, I'm glad it's gone. It actually like probably this might not be a popular opinion, probably finishes off Domain as a deck.
I don't know. I don't
because
think it does.
Domain's about to lose Leyline Binding as well.
So that's interesting, right? So let's talk about this because Corey Steelcutter, that mechanic is just prowess is just now worse, right? Okay.
Yep.
It still exists. Prowess still exists. I'm not sure about the Omniscience combo. I guess that is just dead, is it?
No, so it's not dead. There's a talent that I think it's Builder's talent that last phase reanimates a enchantment, and there is a 5 mana reanimation spell in standard currently from Brothers War that hits artifacts, creatures, enchantments. But obviously that's going to rotate. So at the moment we have Builder's talent.
Okay, so half a hero, Monstrous Rage. That doesn't kill the red deck. The red deck is still it can still kill without these cards. Hopeless Nightmare and this town, Esper Pixies, Esper Blink. The black white version was still around.
Still playable.
Yeah, the black white version.
My point is these decks aren't. I don't think these decks are just dead. These decks are just now put back in line.
Yeah,
is my point. And this is a clever. It's a great ban. It's a great ban. I don't know what the format's going to look like afterwards. I do think there's going to be open spaces. I would personally be really excited to be able to be a mid-range gamer right now. I think that deck's going to be really strong right now.
Kaitos in our futures. Kaitos everywhere. No.
Yeah. Decks are really strong, but also like control and stuff is going to exist. It's just one of those things. Like the format is just. I think it's going to be exciting. I'd be interested to see the next couple of challenges. What happens?
Yeah.
So. The issue here is, Josh, you're spot on. As we see it right now, Brewer's Paradise, Final Fantasy, another 20 cards just become playable, maybe. Like, it's a good time. My big worry now is essentially we've nerfed 4 very powerful decks and have left Standard a step below its power level. If Standard was power level 1, it's now power level 2, I think is fair to say, with these bans. It just means that obviously these design philosophy is well in advance. So if we see a power level 1 deck from Blind Eternities, not Blind Eternities, Edge of Eternities, or from Spider-Man, or from Avatar, there is a power vacuum at the minute, and like it might be, if there is a next powerful card, then maybe we just see that fill the gap immediately. But who cares? It's now. It's fun. Woo! That's me eloquently putting it.
So I'm happy with the talk that we've had on standard. Do you two have anything else you want to add before we move on to Pioneer?
No.
What would you play? What would you play in standard right now? Obviously, I might be doing mid range.
I've already thought about this. It would be Jund Exhaust. So there's a silly little combo with like was Afterburner Expert and something else. I would play that.
Because that deck, I saw that deck when I was doing standard RCQs quite a fair amount, and it just I've just not seen it anywhere.
Yeah, it's the fastest deck that I can think of, to be honest with you.
Fair one.
I'd play Golgari Roots at the minute,
Interesting.
Right now, but as good as Golgari Roots probably is, Golgari Roots might be along mid range and like how much it gained today. Tyvar does rotate out, and I think that deck is a Tyvar deck. And while we still have Insidious Roots, I think it's called.
Yep.
Tyvar missing removes a lot of the combo shenanigans, but no, I'd play Roots at the minute.
Cool.
What about you, Josh? Well, I'm assuming you just
the mid range.
Yeah, fair.
As many Kaitos as you can cram into a deck box.
The deck is just solid. Like the build of that deck didn't change even with this horrendous standard. It did okay-ish in the Pro Tour. Like it's just a solid deck. I think solid deck.
Just remember, you cannot play Psychic Frog in standard. Just remember that.
It's not on the ban list.
Not on the ban list, but it's not on the legal list either. Anyway, moving on to Pioneer. Pioneer, they mentioned no changes and that they were quite happy with sort of like the health of the format. I think we touched up on it last week on our predictions that we were expecting something to go out of the red deck because it's like 26% of the meta. I'm wondering whether they've just not really paid attention to Pioneer because there's been no tournaments to it, or whether they have been paying attention and they are just generally happy with it. Like you've got challenges and leagues on Magic Online, but outside of that, you don't really have anything. And from what I can see, like all over my Twitter, all over MTG Top 8, it's leagues 5-0 every single day, back to back to back, or challenges Top 8, or wins, or just outside of making Top 8. So I think Mono Red, maybe even Monsters Rage or Heartfire Hero, is going to be. It's on my watch list anyway for in the near future. For when we finally get to play Pioneer. I know a lot of... Go on, sorry.
I was just looking at like recent lists on sort of Pioneer and from the challenge results and stuff. I'm just seeing NTG Goldfish. It does actually look quite a varied meta, which is annoying because my experience of Pioneer was never good.
I think the issue with Pioneer is not that it's varied. Because I would argue the more so obviously the big problem with standard is we've just seen the Pro Tour is not very varied format. The more competitive events we see in Modern, the more people we see play Boros Energy. Mm-hmm. So if Pioneer is somebody's pet format, favorite format, oh, you know what? Nobody's playing this. I'm just going to play Mardu Greasefang. Sorry, Josh, you were the first person I saw, and we've already discussed Red, so I couldn't look at Dan either. But we're just going to play Greasefang. You could get there because the actual weight isn't behind the format. I think if, let's say, Spotlight Liverpool is now Pioneer, no changes, I think we would see Arclight Phoenix go through the roof. I think we would see Mono Red go through the roof. The first thing people are going to do is gravitate towards these very, very strong strategies. And while it may look healthy, it's almost like a false narrative in that format at the minute.
Okay.
I mean, I could be wrong. Please let me know. Is Psychic Frog legal in Pioneer?
It is not.
Oh. No, I need to play that then.
Kaito is legal though.
Woo.
You know, there was a fair few like blue-black mid-ranges with Yorion in the companion slot.
Out of interest, Josh, you just said it looks varied. So we've got Phoenix and Mono Red, I presume. Is there anything spicy going on?
Nothing too
Is
spicy. You got
Incarnation still
prowess.
playable?
I don't know what defines a spicy in Pioneer because I don't look at it. So like, it's like to me, because if I looked at modern, I'd be like, "Ooh, this is spicy."
Yeah,
because I know the sort of how the meta is played, how it's developed, how it's focused. But Pioneer, not a clue. Like
No,
I
fair.
like
Yeah.
Celestial Angels is up there. Hidden Strings is a deck I remember. I could
Okay.
see. There's a I'm literally just looking just now. I can see a Nose off Greasefang deck. I'm just looking at challenge results, by the way.
So
There's not many.
when
There's not much in leagues. Leagues that look really unrepresented. Like there's a league from the 28th that's got 4 decks in it. When you look at modern, there's like 70, 80 decks usually, and
Yeah.
like I don't know.
When I'm casting my mind back to what Pioneer looked like, the RCQ last year, back in sort of like February through to so like June, July time, it was very similar to what it is now. So you had like Mono Red, at that point it was Wizards, now it's just gone onto the Mice package because everyone's realised how good it is. Then you had Is It Phoenix, you had Mono Black in the form of Waste Not. This deck's actually playing Mox Amber, which looks terrifying. It runs Cecil from Final Fantasy, it runs like Tiny Bones, so it's just got ways to ramp you.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You got your Lotus Field, so that was quite prevalent back then. Blue White Control, quite prevalent. Grill Prowess. Rakdos Midrange this time last year. This was Rakdos Vampires. And you've got your Greasefangs, your Angels. So the format doesn't look as though, even though we've had umpteenth amounts of new sets come out since Pioneer season last year, it doesn't look as though the format's changed at all. Maybe just like iterations of certain decks have changed, like the Mono Black deck with the Mox Ambers and so on and so forth. But the decks themselves haven't changed.
There's a Dimir mid-range deck here, or Dimir aggro deck that is very similar to the standard one. So it's like very similar. So maybe that's where I'll pivot if I have to play this Dumpster Fire format.
Come on now. Let's not get personal, Josh.
There's 4 Kaitos in this list I'm looking at.
So Pioneer, I'm skeptical of it. I think it's a mistake not banning anything from red. But hey ho. Are you happy to move on, or
all I have to say about Pioneer is, look, I'll take more interest in the format when Wizards do. I think that's where we're all at, to be honest.
Yeah.
If there was, because looking at this ban list, I'm like, oh, maybe I will take a look at Standard. And if it was the same approach to Pioneer.
Controversial take. This format would not exist if Wizards didn't push it so hard. This would be in the realm. Do you remember that format, Frontier?
Yeah.
Oh?
Exactly. That's where Pioneer would be.
Yeah. It basically was Pioneer done.
I remember Tiny Leaders got pushed for a little bit and then just fell off the earth, really.
Frontier was basically Pioneer, but with fetch lands, essentially.
Right, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Moving on to the next one. Modern. I'm completely happy with Modern. There's no changes on the ban list or restricted list. No unbans, no bans. Sam, you mentioned. I can't remember if it was on the podcast or it was just like off cam or whatever. Saying like Wizards have come out saying that they're not going to be as sporadic with the unbans. Every single ban is restricted. And it looks like they followed through. It's 2 ban windows that we've had now where we've not seen any unbans. Again, no changes. I'm happy with the format.
Yeah, in their article, they don't even refer to a specific card.
Yeah.
Like, they don't go, oh, well, Flage is on. Flage is an example. Flage is on our watch list as being very. They've just gone, Boris is good, but, other stuff's playable.
Yeah, exactly.
Sounds, yeah.
Format's good. Combo decks are good, control decks are good, aggro decks are good.
It's very varied. You can play a lot.
Yeah.
I do think there's good and bad deck choices in Modern. I do think that there are good and bad deck choices. I think picking your deck is very important in Modern to do well. But ultimately, like, it's all policed by Boros Energy, and I think Boros Energy is a fine best deck to have right now. I would like to change some of the nonsense of that deck a little bit. Ideally, around, I've always said this about around Ajani, with the bombardment or Ajani activate itself. I do think there is some bombo stuff. Arena of Glory just killing you out of nowhere, but the deck wants to put squares sideways and kill you in combat, essentially. And that, if that's what the best deck is trying to do, that is okay.
Fair play. Yeah, exactly. And okay. I think that, like, Honestly, I like the idea they're not going to unban a card every time. I think sometimes unbanning cards can be a claw in your monkey wish paw.
Yeah.
Like if you were to unban, people wanted Death Ray Shaman unbanned this time, and it's like I don't think you've ever played with Death Ray Shaman.
No,
Like
the card was
you can't
insane.
just go. And it might be fine, but why risk it? Type strategy.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Modern's modern. The guy who won the modern showcase on Saturday, he tweeted he went 12-0, which is for one great achievement, and for two, and I played against a different deck 12 rounds in a row,
Class.
which is sick. Well,
So,
how could you ask?
And he played a deck that I would have argued to avoid, which is a deck I love, which is a version Esper Murktide, splashing for pest control, high noon stuff in the sideboard. Okay. And he played it with playing relatively fair Magic. I guess the unfair aspect is, you get Oculus out a turn earlier than it should or whatever.
Yeah,
but there's a lot of solitudes in the format right now.
But yeah, like 12. How can you ask for something different than 12 decks in a row? Like different decks in a row. That's actually very, very cool. Like, and if you are playing against the same deck once or twice, it's like. It's not like everyone's in Neo form. It's like, okay, this is my second Zoo opponent in this 10-round event. That's fair enough. Or like my second Boros Energy opponent. And like it is what it is. I think Modern's actually in almost a very, very good place. I'm excited.
I seen a tweet before and it made me laugh and then it made me think. And it was like, do you know the meme where there's like a mom holding a kid up in the pool and then it's got like a kid's just struggling and there's a skeleton. Yeah. So it was like Wizards of the Coast was holding up Arena of Glory, and then it was like Lotus Field thinking about Field of the Dead, and then it was like the control decks having what was the blue land that just put a spell on top of its library?
Mystic Sanctuary.
That's the one. Sanctuary. It made me laugh. It's like maybe Arena of Glory is just a problem in Modern. Like if you didn't have that, you wouldn't have like the hasty flages. But maybe you just ban Arena of Glory and Energy's just fine.
So I know we were done a Modern, but I have a comment on that. So
Go on.
The thing, we had a case study recently with Christian and an RCQ who didn't understand how priority worked. Well, he understood how priority worked, but he didn't understand this thing existed in Modern. And I think the Arena of Glory thing, especially with like Fable putting a Flage into the bin, and then you don't have any priority then to interact with the graveyard or interact with the Flage in the graveyard before they're actually put on the stack, if not hasted, is quite a valid point. And I do know Corey Burkhart, when he put his Grixis list together, actually identified that play pattern and said, how do I stop Fable the Mirror Breaker pitching Flage and a card into the bin and then getting priority so I can interact, because he was playing Cling to Dust. And his answer was Orcish Bowmasters. So response to Fable trigger, Orcish Bowmasters. So even if they pitch the Flage into the bin, the Orcish Bowmasters put something on the stack, which gives you the opportunity to then interact with the Flage. And this is something that is, I think, is a problem, because it's using game rules and game mechanics to gain an advantage, not necessarily playing. I can't word it, but it's using like sort of like. Not as bad as KCI, but the way KCI sort of used the rules and the way the game worked to their advantage, Flage can somewhat do that. Game-winning threat into the bin, no way to respond to it unless it's on the stack or on the field. But even then, it's on the field, they gain an advantage.
Okay,
I think that's interesting.
Yeah, let's just ban Arena then. But no, moving on from Modern. Josh, this is your bread and butter. Legacy. Me and Sam know. Well, I know niche about Legacy. No changes again.
No changes.
You mentioned that obviously Reanimate was a problem on last episode, and then
I don't know if it is a problem. Like, okay, so the numbers dictate that Legacy's fine. Like the numbers dictated that Legacy was fine during Micro Spawn. And the problem I think that people have with Legacy is because it is a fan format now. It is a fan format. I think Wizards have identified the fact that they see this as a format where someone could build a deck and their deck will just ultimately last. And once upon a time that was the case. Legacy, you build your Legacy deck and 1 or 2 cards a year impacted the format. Seriously impacted the format, but impacted it enough where it was exciting. but you weren't banning your decks. Now with M8 on Horizons, all that stuff, Legacy is wide open. I think the when it comes to the BNR, I think people wanted to see something maybe out of Reanimator, maybe Entomb, but then again, is Entomb a pillar of Legacy? I would say it is, but there's people say, well, it was once banned, now it's not. But then the real problem that people are not liking is the Upsor spells deck, because it's using a game design to take an advantage, or a game like a game design that wasn't intended to do this as a advantage to win. And I think that is the sort of same level as Microspawn. In fact, that creates horrible play patterns. It creates horrible experiences because the numbers don't back up for a ban in Legacy. They just don't. Like, there's things like you can see things like there's patterns happening. You see the Upsor spells deck increasing in number, therefore increasing in win rate, but not to the point where it's like 25% of the field. It's like 5% of the field, if that. But it's that experience with Legacy that I think is important, and they have banned off experience before because, like I said, Microspawn the ban wasn't backed up by numbers. It was backed up by the fact that people hated playing against it. It wasn't fun, and I think they mentioned that on the thing here, that Upsor spells is being looked at because it is a problem. But again, they're really slow with acting on Legacy. I mean, the Dimir Reanimator had 3 bans now
in 3 different windows.
3 different windows that were all arguably months and months and months too late. So if they were acted harder on that now, we would have been 6 months earlier on something. This BNR would have been the Upsor spells ban, for example, instead of we're looking at Upsor spells and the next one will get sorted. But I suspect a lot of Legacy players will be disappointed after this.
Probably.
I'm not, because my deck is still hopefully in safe, but
because they mentioned on the article that like Upsor spells has got like a one of a kind card that runs the risk of killing the deck completely if you were to address that archetype. That's pulled directly from the from the article. So I kind of like how they're looking at it, where if you ban that one card, then you're not just like, cause in like the Reanimate decks, you got cards that you can sort of ban that support it, but you don't just kill the entire deck altogether, which is what you were saying with like the pillars of the format and that. So I sort of like it, and the fact that it's not showing up where it's winning every single challenge, winning every single sort of like event that happens, like Eternal Weekend, for example. So it sort of makes sense for him to not ban anything. But again, I know zero about Legacy.
just quoting the article here, it says that they're abusing the Magic's game engine, is what I was meant to say before. But and this is sort of doing that, but they think it's a good thing to have because it keeps people on top of the rules of Magic, which I don't know. Shout out to Christian again with the inflating. But it is cool to have these strange decks, but I think the discourse in Legacy now, particularly from the louder people in the community, is just like, we are an advocate of have cool decks, interesting decks, even the turn 1 decks in Legacy. However, F this deck, just kill it. I think it's fine because turn 1 decks exist in Legacy, right? You can have Storm, the Epic Storm, for example. You've got different sort of combos. You've got the Mississippi River decks and all that good stuff that can win. You've got your initiative decks that can essentially win on turn 1. It not win the game outright, but essentially present a game-winning threat and board state. So they exist in Legacy, but the fact that this is just you pack so much hate and it still might not be enough.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And then moving on to Vintage. I don't think I've ever seen a Black Lotus or any of the mocks in my life. But for those who are interested, no changes. They are keeping an eye on Lurrus. Well, they had serious discussion around the possible banning of Lurrus for power level reasons. But but you know, it sort of also just keeps a lot of the combo decks in check.
Yeah, essentially.
Yeah.
I don't know enough. I don't know enough to comment on it, but yeah, essentially, Loris is. I think Loris is the safety catch of the format at the moment. I think.
Okay. But no, that's pretty much it from recap. Oh yeah, Pauper. Sorry.
Pauper, no change.
No changes. Again, no changes. This has just been standard. I mean, do we want to go into like alchemy and historic?
No, we'll stop at Pauper.
Yeah, Pauper, no changes.
Because Pauper's a real format, and Pauper's a great format. They mentioned High Tide, but I think people just don't want to lose to silly combo decks in terms of taking lots of game actions. But in Pauper, you've got Cycle Storm, you've got Walls combo, you've got all these things. You know, you got the Jeskai Ephemerate decks. You've got all these things that take lots of game actions. And guess what? If you can't win the game and you think they won it, you can just concede. You don't have to play that game. If you can make them use the clock of magical language as I do, but if you're playing in paper and this is what I'm going to do, or playing live, this is what happened, you can see they've won. It's down to you. You can just concede, or you can play. Every color has answers to these decks. You know.
Yeah. I mean, just looking through the article, they've mentioned High Tide a lot of times. It's highlighted in orange, so you can just quickly pick out, and it's mentioned a lot. They did mention about the trial unbanning of Prophetic Prism, and it's gone well, and they're leaving it be. So you could consider Prism to no longer feel unbanned. But yeah,
I mean,
High Tide players unlucky.
If Wizards are really bothered about people comboing off and taking ages, then they should really ban Titan, because I sat through a Titan player for 10 minutes yesterday to combo off because I was like, you're going to kill me. I'm going to watch YouTube until you kill me.
Yeah.
And they got me game 1, and then I just annihilated them game 2 and 3. But,
nice.
I still made them use the clock. And
yeah, you got to work for it.
In paper, I'd be like, yeah, sound. Next. Because I can't do anything else. I can't sit there and watch a YouTube video on the competitive tournament. But yeah. Also, you can visualize the combo in paper.
Can. Shortcuts, man. But no, that's it. Josh, Sam, anything else you want to add?
Nope.
I would like to say that it's still. I know this is like a filler episode in terms of. I don't know why the camera's looking all funny. I know this is a filler episode. We're going to release another episode next, but I just want to say that the competition to win the Apex sleeves and deck box is still live on our Twitter and our Blue Sky, so please interact with that. I'm sure Dan will put a link in the show notes when he edits this video, because it's Dan's turn, and we will announce the winner this week. I don't know.
Yes, maybe.
I think we'll answer this week. Let's get it out there.
No, Josh is right. Sure. Follow us on Blue Sky. Follow us on Twitter. That's how you enter the giveaway. And we'll pick a winner while recording, and we'll go from there.
And don't forget to interact with our listener questions too. We've been getting dribs and drabs of listener questions, but we will be reading them out at the end of the pod on our featured episodes. So please interact with questions, ask us questions, comments. Shout outs, if you want to do shout outs, that's fine. Just please interact with that. We're really keen to hear from you.
Most definitely are. But other than all of that, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, share with anyone and everyone, good, bad. Just tell someone about the pod. And we'll see you all next one. Thanks very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Bye.